Hello and all, welcome to the Math Magic Show. In this one, let's take a look at a couple examples of solving an equation by completing a square. So we have x squared minus 4x equals 6. It's a quadratic equation. There's already a constant on the right side. So let's go through the process of completing the square, parentheses, and then you take whatever the variable is, like x, you put it there. After that, you take 1/2 of the coefficient of x. So in this particular case, it's going to be 1/2 of the -4. That gives you -2. And you put that next right there. You close the parentheses and you put a 2 up top. So far what we have is x minus 2 and the quantity is squared. The next stage would be to do this. Take a look. You take whatever that number is. In this case it's -2. You square that quantity, which gives you +4. And then you subtract it off in that position. You always subtract. Always subtract. That's why it's -4. And then you copy that +6. So that's what it looks like thus far. Okay, let's go on to the next move. Next, I'm going to just rewrite the equation so it looks a bit more clean. So what we have is x minus 2 quantity squared minus 4 equals 6. Okay, let's continue. The goal is to find x after all, so I'm going to just do the following next. I'm going to add 4 on both sides, on that side and that side. I'm adding 4. Now, on the left side, let's see what we get, and then on the right side what we get. So, specifically, I'm going to have the following. We have those two will cross off because one is -4, one is +4. They go away. And then I have the following. X minus 2 quantity squared equals 10, because 6 plus 4 is 10. The next stage in this process is to actually take square roots on both sides. So let's do that next. And I know that because over here, as you can see, it's x minus 2 squared now, and because it's squared, the opposite is the square root operation. So I'm going to take the square root on the right side, and in this process, whenever you do this, you want to make sure you have a plus or minus the square root of 10, not just the positive square root of 10. Remember that? Also, on the left side, do the same thing then. So you're going to have the square root of that x minus 2 squared. And then the next move is the following, that these will cancel. So in other words, the 2 and the root there will cancel off like that. So you can indicate that by drawing some lines, for example, this way. The little brown dashed lines. Let's go on to the next step. So what will that look like? I'm going to have the following. X minus 2, that's all that's left over on the left side, equals that plus or minus the square root of 10. Let's continue. Remember, the goal is to get x by itself. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides naturally enough. So I'm going to add 2 on that side and 2 on that side. And on the left side of the equals, the -2 in brown and in yellow, those will cancel off because they're opposite values. And that will just allow us to bring x straight down. But on the right side, I'm going to have that +2 plus or minus the square root of 10. At this point, above my head, be careful because 2 and the square root of 10 are essentially like unlike quantities. So you cannot combine them into some kind of plus or minus the square root of 12 or plus or minus the square root of some, I don't know, 8 or something along those lines, okay? No. 2 separate quantities, leave them in exactly that form, unlike terms essentially. And this is often an acceptable answer. But let's make sure we remember what this answer represents, which is the fact that we have the following. We have 2 separate values of x values. So x equals 2 plus the square root of 10 is one of those answers. And then the next one would be the following. X equals 2 minus the square root of 10. So we have 2 separate answers here. Often, again, however, you will see them written this way as 2 plus or minus the square root of 10 to make the answer format more compact. Let's go through one more example just for practice. So it's going to look like the following. I'll have x squared plus 6x equals 8. So again, put the parentheses down, copy x by itself, not x squared. Okay. Next to that, you're going to put 1/2 of the coefficient of x. So in this case, that's going to be the following. 1/2 of the 6, which is +3. Keep that in mind. It's +3, +3. So right here, now I'm going to put the following. I'm going to put +3 for that reason. Close parentheses and indicate you're squaring that quantity with this little 2 up top. As before, the next stage is this one. You take this number, that 3, and you square it. That's going to give you 9. And then, as I said in the first example, you want to make sure that you always subtract the square of that quantity. So here, it's going to be -9, not +9. Always minus. Okay. And then you copy the 8. So that's the first stage of the process. So then, let me rewrite the equation so it looks a bit more clean. I'm going to have, in other words, x plus 3 squared minus 9 equals 8. Let's go on to the next step. So I need to now, naturally enough, add 9 on both sides. Remember, the goal is to get x always. the negative 9 and the positive 9 will cancel off. I'm indicating that with little green lines. Let's continue. So now it's copied. I'm going to have x plus 3, that quantity squared. The 9's cancel, but on the right side I'll have 8 plus 9, which is 17. And as before, since now on the left side we have a quantity squared, that's a perfect setup for taking square roots on both sides. Let's do that. I'm going to have the following. Square root of, well, plus or minus the square root of 17 on the right side. Again, plus or minus, not just the plus or just the minus. Both of them are needed. Okay. Then on the left side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take square roots. And as before, you want to indicate that you're crossing them off perhaps in some fashion. So I do that by drawing lines. In other words, it's going to look like this. I'm going to have that. I'm indicating the fact that the square root and the 2 and the exponent are basically canceling off. So I'm going to have x plus 3 equals 17, plus or minus the square root of 17. That is, on the left side, notice that the root and the 2 have been cleared away. Now, because it says x plus 3, you got to subtract 3 from both sides. So that's what the yellow 3's are indicating to us. Again, those two, because one is positive, one is negative, will clear away. So then, next stage, I'm going to have x equals negative 3, plus or minus the square root of 17. Again, do not combine the negative 3 and the 17, because the negative 3 and the quantity and the root symbol after the plus or minus are like basically two completely separate terms, unlike terms that you cannot combine. Let's go on to the next step. I'm going to have x equals negative 3 plus the square root of 17. That's one of the values of x. That makes our original equation true, just one of them. Then I'll also have x equals negative 3 minus that square root of 17. And that's the second value of x that makes the original equation true. So again, the plus or minus is often used because it gives a nice compact answer, but you've got to remember and understand what the plus or minus means, which is it gives two separate values of x. Sometimes you're asked to list those also. Okay, that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been helpful. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in another magical video.